Welcome to Permission to Thrive. I'm your host, Suzi Lula. As a spiritual therapist for over 20 years, I have the honor and privilege of ushering women and mothers just like you on a journey from simply surviving to powerfully thriving. I also have the honor of raising our son, Will, who is now a young adult, with my longtime partner, Jami. So I'm right there on the journey with you. Consider this your personal sanctuary, your space to meet your heart, embrace your messy, and come home to your most authentic, extraordinary self. My hope is that you leave resourced and inspired because you are here to shine. Welcome to Permission to Thrive. Oh my gosh, thank you so much, everyone, for all of your DMs, your emails, and your requests for a deeper peek into my relationship with my longtime partner and husband, Jami. So today, Jami and I are in conversation, bringing you a deeper peek into our relationship. And today we talk about our love journals that we keep and have kept over the 25 years of our relationship and how that might assist you. We talk about more of our messy and how we have learned to deal with conflict in our relationship. And lastly, we talk about our refrigerator. So sit back, get a cup of tea, light a candle. This is your time, your sanctuary. Relax and enjoy. So welcome back, Lovey. I really appreciate you for coming back on, for being willing to get vulnerable and to dive in a little deeper into our relationship.
I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful to talk about our relationship and the hopes that will assist you with your relationship.
In some way, shape, or form.
In some way, shape, or form.
So why don't you jump in and share maybe a little bit about what's been in your heart about what assists us in our relationship to thrive?
Well, I think in the first talk, we talked about our long walks and deep talks. And today I'd like to talk about our joint journal that we have on our bed, kind of switches pillows from night to night, not every night all the time, but where we just write little things, appreciations and gratitudes for one another. I feel like it's been really powerful, even in those moments where there's a little rub, there's some conflict, and we come back and we've had some moment to breathe through it and to get to the other side and to say, I'm sorry for the way I acted today, or I see you, I understand, I have a better understanding of where you might have been in the moment of our challenge. And I see you, and I know that we work through this, but just those little writings, they're powerful. They're powerful. They're short, usually a page or, 3/4 of a page, but they work.
Yeah. So just for everyone listening, it is a journal. I call it a love book, but whatever, it's a journal. We've had them over the years since we were married, and it lives on our bed. Mm-hmm. And whoever has written then puts it on the pillow of the other person. So something got written to you or for you. And then the other person takes it and in their own way, in their own time, then we write something back, just to give you all an idea. And I do agree with you. It is something that I treasure. I've gone back and read things from years gone by. It gives me such an insight into where we were at different times in our relationship. And it certainly gives me an insight into how I was showing up in our relationship at different times. And I agree with what you're saying, whether it is something that we're acknowledging and appreciating about ourselves, it always feels good to feel seen. We all know that what we're all seeking in any kind of relationship is to feel seen and valued and heard. So we do get that feeling, but I also love what you're saying, and it's so true. If we've been in a conflict or if we've been really going through a hard time, there's such value in repairing what's happened And so I think receiving something that you've written to me or I've written to you, both in me writing it after a hard time or receiving something from you, the value of the repairing has been very significant, I think, in our relationship and keeping us strong.
I think too, what comes forward for me is the idea that you have a way of processing things as a counselor, as a therapist, as a life coach, in ways that I don't. And I hear things, and sometimes it takes me a minute to digest it, to process it, where you do it because you're doing it every day. You're working with
Yes.
people and you're questioning, and you're asking
Yes.
open-ended questions and heart-centered listening. And the other thing that we talked about on the walk today was about listening. And I haven't always been a good listener. I think you've taught me to be a better listener. And I grew up in a family where we're thinking about the next thing that we're going to say rather than listening to what the person that's talking. It's like, oh, okay, well, as soon as they're done, some of you can probably relate to that. And some of you probably grew up in families like that. And so learning to listen, to really listen. I even find it when I'm in like on Zoom meetings and stuff where I'll get distracted and I'm scrolling through something and I'm like, oh, what did they say? I stopped listening. And
Yeah, and I think what you're saying is so important. So first of all, can you just imagine being married to me? Because I do this all day. And so I have a lot of empathy for you. You are married to someone who is an eternal processor. And I think the reason I do this for my living is because I'm an eternal processor. I can remember times in our relationship where you have so kindly said to me, babe, do we really have to process this too? And so, first of all, just a little empathy for you and being married to someone who processes all day long. But I also think to anyone listening, I do believe that that is one of the differences between men and women. And we women are processors. And I can talk to my girlfriends for an hour and then another hour on top of that. But I do find that men are looking for more processing and I think interested in having deeper relationships. And
Yeah.
so then I'm hearing you talk about listening. And I think, wow, that's such a great point. It sounds so simple. Oh, listen. And yet I can so relate to what you're saying. Not only to really set a strong intention not to interject. And this goes for parenting as well. I mean, years, I think, of being in conversation with Will, and I sort of have my finger over my mouth just to remind myself, give him a space to talk and to trust that you don't have to come up with the next thing to say or fix or do. I think that is a very powerful point because it's so underestimated in our culture. The simple value of listening leads to such powerful intimacy because, again, we all want to feel heard and seen and valued. And our culture doesn't teach us how significant it is to simply listen to another individual.
But it's also, I think it's a matter of because, and probably doesn't apply to you because you're all levitating while you meditate and stuff, but we're still working through this. But the idea of it's a muscle. It's like any muscle in the body. And if you didn't grow up with it, it's like learning to do it without your mind going on what's the next thing I'm going to say. It's a muscle. So it's really listening. So it's let me reflect back to you what I think I heard you say, which was such a powerful tool. And sometimes when the person's talking, they go on and on and on and on. It's like giving people the space to be able to go through and reflect back. Maybe that's a good exercise. The whole idea of like, let me reflect back what I think I heard you say. Is that perception?
And also just being sincerely interested in what the other person is saying when you're really sincerely interested. And I think the other side of listening is when we're triggered, because I also know that there are many times that you're sharing something, and I can feel in my body and I can feel in my nervous system that I literally cannot wait to be
Yeah.
able to say something
Right.
and to be able to learn to be with my own nervous system
Mhm.
and still allow you the time to get out what you need to say. Often my body's calmed down
Right.
by the time you finish, by the mere space that we're giving each other.
And it's that whole idea, like you say, when you're triggered, it's like, I'm really not interested in what the hell you have to say. When I'm calm and when I'm in my Zen mode, it's like, oh, I can listen to you in open-hearted and listening and heart-centered listening, and I can do all that. But when I'm angry, I don't feel that way. So how do I get to that place, or how do you get to that place
Yeah.
when you are feeling triggered?
Yeah. And we were talking about this yesterday. We were having lunch with a dear friend, and we were talking about our different attachment styles.
Mm.
And I'm always so aware, like you're saying, if one of us is angry or one of us is having big feels, I'm always aware there are not just two of us in the relationship. Then there's your internalized mother, your internalized father, your inner child, my internalized mother and father. And so typically when someone is having big feelings and big emotions and anger and upset, it's triggering, obviously not to the adult person sitting across,
Mhm.
but either that inner child who's scared or an internalized voice. And I think I've gotten to know you so well over the years. I can hear the flavor of when it sounds like stories you've told me about your dad or stories you've told me about your mom. I'm used to now, I've sort of practiced so much. Oh, that's your dad speaking right
Mhm.
now. And it helps me to be compassionate. But to answer your question, how do I deal with it? It's been a huge learning for me. So we were talking yesterday at lunch about my abandonment issues that I've had in the past. And especially early on in our relationship, I like to think I've practiced and I'm better now, but early on for sure, when we would get upset and when both of us were upset at the same time, you had much more of a healthy way to say, I need some time right now. I need to go into the other room. I can't talk right now or I'm going to really get really angry. And I had such abandonment issues that I would hear that my mind would say, oh my gosh, he's so healthy right now. My mind would say, you're actually the healthy one in the relationship right now. My mind knew that, but my body would feel the trigger of the abandonment that I used to feel with my mom.
Mhm.
And I would freaking literally go run after you into another room. I would feel like I was going to be abandoned because if my mom didn't like something I would say, she would just literally just turn around, walk out of the room. And as a little girl, I was really left with big feelings. And so, cut to our adult life, there were times that I was sitting with those big feelings and I did not know how to be with them. That has been a huge learning for me. And when you ask, how do I deal with it? I've really practiced a lot. That's why I'm so passionate about what I do. I had to learn it myself, and I want to teach others how to be present and mother your own inner big feelings.
Yeah,
It's hard.
I mean, that's the whole thing, is we have a perception of other relationships and it's like, oh, it all seems to be going so well and they're doing it right and they're parenting their kids right and they're so loving and whatnot. And it's like, the truth of the matter is everybody has their messy, like we have our messy and the working through of it. Now, in that context of walking out, I had to remember, because you also would go to that place and say, oh, there, you're just going to walk out. So I had to learn to say, I'm going to step out before it goes too far, because it feels like it's going beyond that boundary. It's going to a bridge too far. That's going to crash and burn. And I need to get out. and I'll be back. And I didn't know if I was going to be back in 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 3 hours. It was usually within 15, 30 minutes, maybe an
Yes.
hour. But it was a matter of being able to say, I don't want this to escalate to the level, because we're both going to be irrational and it doesn't feel good. And it's not the way that we want to be, because then we begin saying things that we don't really mean. We're just saying it out of anger and hurt. You're saying out of abandonment. I'm saying it out of defense and my armor and protecting myself and being able to set a boundary for ourselves. And hopefully that we're each able to come back into I know that as we've grown, because it's been almost 25 years we're together, almost 22 years that we're married. I think that we've gotten a lot better at it. It's not that we don't have that messy that comes up, that discomfort, those moments where it's like, oh God, that little kid inside is just, I get scared when we talk about money or talk about sex or we talk about whatever is going on, the next tour or whatever it is. But it's being able to set those boundaries and say, I need a minute to breathe. I don't want it to escalate. I want to treat you with respect, and I want to respect myself.
Yeah.
And I want to respect the energy that we've set in our house.
Yeah.
Which I know that we haven't always, but we've gotten a lot better.
Yeah. And I think that's the whole point, right? You're reminding me of that Gary Zukov. To me, it's an amazing definition of an intimate relationship. He says that intimate relationships are relationships between two equal souls for the purpose of spiritual growth and evolution. And so I think that often in our culture, we're taught everything. That's why we wanted to do this podcast, is because our culture teaches us, you're supposed to have the white picket fence and the 2.5 kids and the right cars in the driveway. And that, like you were saying, you think of the people next door, your best friends, and you think they have it all together. And our culture doesn't teach us how to be with the messy. And so when we don't know how to be with the messy, and messy inevitably comes up, then the context we go to is something's wrong. And, oh, Jami and Suzi, I bet they don't have any messy, or Jane and John, they don't have any messy, because you think when your own messy comes up, you shouldn't have it because we haven't been taught how to be present with it. So rather than thinking that it's something negative, bad, not good about your relationship, when you recognize relationships are meant to do exactly that. They are meant for two equal beings to come together and each individual grow and evolve. And I think that has been something that has for sure assisted me. When I think of the messy that comes up, I am very committed and passionate about trying to remind myself that whatever is happening, it's happening for my growth, even when it's the messiest and the darkest. And for some people listening, it might mean for you that you're going to choose to step away from a relationship, that you're going to choose to complete a relationship. One of the things I think that was so just fortunate for me is that I knew what I needed in a partner. I knew that I needed someone who was on your own spiritual path, who would clean up your own side of the street. I didn't care what path you were on, but just someone who was willing to take your own personal responsibility. But for someone listening, you might not be with that partner. So it's whatever is for your growth and for your evolution. That is what a real spiritual partnership is.
I think too, because of the way that we got in our relationship and the idea of, I don't know that we're taught in culture how to discern the partner that we're looking for in our life. And I know that it goes back to that Disney myth of it's all beautiful and everything's great and there's never an argument and everybody just loves one another. And that's not the truth of life and the flow and the soul's journey and the whole, my soul companion, my soul partner, my soulmate idea, that it has to be that fairy tale myth. And soulmates come in to reflect back to us, to assist us to grow. And I think sometimes people are here for a season and some people are here for a lifetime. And the idea that we're not suggesting to our kids and taking them through some kind of rite of passage to teach them how, like, well, what are the qualities of the person that you'd like to spend your life with? What's important to you? And I used to do it in my creativity workshop, that questionnaire that I used to do. And I used to ask that because I worked at a music school, and it was like, what are the qualities of the people that you want to work with? Your bandmates, your crew, your agents, your lawyer, everybody involved. What are the qualities of those people? And then the next question was, what are the qualities of the person that you want to spend your life with? But we don't think about it. We just go bumbling through relationships. Well, that didn't work. Well, that didn't work. And running instead of having clarity about what it is that we're looking for. And I think by the time we got together, we were both pretty clear. We'd both been through some relationships. I had definitely been through some relationships and had to look at that. I was going into relationships blindly because someone was attracted or someone liked me. Then, okay, well, I've got to move towards it. And then I realized, no, I wanted to be in alignment.
Right. And I think that's one of the points of doing this podcast is for anyone listening, this is the opportunity to get clear on both what you're saying is so important, both what you are looking for in a relationship, even if you are smack in the middle of a 20-year relationship right now. What are the qualities that are important to you? Right. And I think that by extension, what you're sharing about our children, what is important to teach them about what to look for. So if we broke it down, and I would say in our relationship, yes, to the best of my ability, I had done some contemplative practice about what I was looking for. I knew that I wanted someone who was accountable on a spiritual path. And I knew that what I needed was someone who was emotionally available to me, because I knew that that is what had been missing in my life. And so that was very important to me. And I will say to anyone and everyone listening, even with that, and you are all of those things, I will say in spades, you take your own personal accountability. You are so emotionally available to me, and you are very generous of spirit. You're deeply on your own path. So you are all those things in spades. And with that said, still all of my unprocessed, unresolved issues came up in our relationship. Like I had said on the last episode, I felt very not taken care of as a child. So I have projected that on you. Please take care of me, take care of me, take care of me. So we also don't want to portray that just because you get clear, it doesn't mean that then everything's coming up roses all the time either. It is back to the Gary Zukov thing. This is for our growth. But when you're with someone that you are aligned with, so if you are listening and you begin to contemplate, wow, what is important to me in my relationship, then the next step is, how can I be that for myself?
Right. Yeah.
And that for me has been a key for us, is that question, how can I be emotionally available for myself? That has been the key that assisted me to stop looking for it from you. And then the last thing I'll share is about, because I think your point about our kids is so important. I have spent, and I know you have too, time talking to Will, our son, about what are the qualities that are important to him, that he's looking for in friendships, in intimate relationships. And then hopefully we are instilling in him, how do you become that for yourself, so that you're not externally looking for that in a friendship. If you're having challenges in friendship, how do you become the person? And when do you know when to walk away, and all the discernments that are so important. But I love that you brought that up, because culture does not teach us what to look for in another. Culture certainly doesn't teach us then how to heal those things within ourselves. You know?
Yeah. Excellent. Well said.
Yeah.
Well said.
So the last thing I thought we should leave them with is something very practical. Let's just get so practical because I'm thinking about our walk this morning and you mentioned it. So I thought I'd just leave everyone with this. You talked about our refrigerator.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's part of the messy, and
exactly.
it's part of who Suze is and who I am. The whole thing of the vegetables, and I get them and I leave them in the plastic, and you look in there and you just see a bunch of plastic, and I'm just trying to keep it fresh. And
right. So let's describe to everyone so they understand what we're talking about, because it was such a, when I heard you say it this morning, it was just such a great metaphor about the ways in which we are different and the ways in which that we try to work out our differences and create enough space for both of us. So we have this refrigerator, and you are so gracious because you're the one that mostly goes to the market for us, and you get really fresh foods, and we always have really great fresh foods in our refrigerator. But it's much more important to me to see orderly. I'm Zen, I'm orderly. I like everything to have its own place. And honestly, you go and purchase everything, so I should be responsible for placing everything the way that I like it. But even when I do, inevitably by the end of the week, because you save things and there's containers full of this that we didn't eat. And so I open the refrigerator and it's so messy. And I just want it to be zen and organized. And
she
you,
basically like nothing in there, to be honest.
it's not that I don't want nothing, it's that I want what is in there to have its particular place. And it's a great metaphor for us because messy doesn't bother you as much, like organization and zen. And
well, Susie's organized in that way. I'm less organized. But when I do organize things, I'm amazing at organizing things. But I know where it is because I do a lot of the cooking. So it's like I know where things is. And Suze just wants to be able to go and grab it. And even William grew up and it's like, Dad, where are the grapes? They're in the refrigerator.
They're
It's
like way in the
Where in
back.
the back. Well, just pull stuff out and look. But they want to see it just right there to grab.
Yes. So how do we work this out? Because it is such a great metaphor. If you're listening, perhaps you and your partner, it might not be your refrigerator, but certainly there are ways in which you show up one way, your partner shows up a different way. For me, it goes back to abundance versus constriction, abundance versus lack. So when I feel myself wanting it a different way, then I start asking myself the question, well, how can I be part of the solution? Because honestly, you do most of the marketing and a lot of the cooking, and you cook a lot. I mean, excess food. And so there are containers and stuff. So if I look at it and I want to stay in abundance, then I'm grateful that you go to the market for us. I'm grateful you buy such great organic produce. I'm grateful you make enough food for all the neighbors. And
So I should probably be feeding the neighbors.
most
more,
often
so.
than not, you do bring stuff to our neighbors. Actually, that's the truth. And so what really assists me is then saying, oh, let me contribute. I will clean out the refrigerator. If I want it to be clean, let me do it, but do it joyfully, not do it with resentment. First, I go to gratitude, then I clean out the refrigerator. And if I want it clean, I can clean it out, right?
Yeah.
How do you deal with our messy?
I just listen to you like going, no, I think I could probably, try to be mindful of cooking smaller portions. I don't know why that is, but then again, I grew up in a family where my father he ate a lot of food. And I remember my sister making the comment once when he came over for dinner and she made food and he was like, oh, that wasn't a whole lot, Kim. And I felt so bad for her. She was a single woman living on a fixed income, and she invited my dad for dinner and he complained, which was kind of his nature. So I want to make sure that everybody has enough. And I remember from the time that William was little, I'd make him food and he would never eat all of it. He would never eat all of it. And
you make huge portions.
And I just never thought.
But I think what you're saying is so important. This is a great moment This is exactly what I was talking about when I'm saying I'm always so aware that there's many of us in the relationship. It's not just the two of us. And this is why I love listening. So just hearing you elaborate on what is going on behind the scenes of why you cook such large portions, I feel so much compassion for you, because now hearing your dad making that comment to Kim and the way that your dad did often complain. And so the way that it landed upon you is that I want to make sure that everyone around me is well fed and has enough. And really, to the point of why we wanted to do this episode today, comes full circle to listening, because you shared and you elaborated on that story. Now I heard that. And it gives me so much compassion for you. Now I have a larger context, a larger understanding. And while we're talking about something so seemingly small as a refrigerator and food and dinners, which is why I wanted specifically to talk about something so seemingly mundane, because it is the seemingly mundane and the small moments that I choose in life. I like to learn in the small little ways so that they don't become huge. And so this was just the perfect, thank you so much for sharing that about your sister and your dad, because I will always now look at these portions differently and look at our refrigerator differently. And I do deeply appreciate that so much. And I deeply appreciate you coming on and being willing to share so openly and authentically. And again, thank you all for listening and your interest in wanting to create deeper, more intimate relationships in your lives. Thank you for all the DMs, the emails, all the questions, all the support in just wanting to hear more about this. So if it has helped anyone today, thank you. Please go forward this week and practice on some of the seemingly simple, mundane things that you can wrap yourself around, and give yourself that permission this week to thrive. We will see you again next week, and then we will come back in the future. Much love, everyone.
Peace and blessing.
Thank you so much for listening. Our hope is that there was something here that spoke to you that will encourage you to create deeper relationships, more intimate relationships in your life. And if there was something that particularly spoke to you, we hope that you will share this with anyone in your life that you know is interested in deeper connections and creating healthy relationships. Thank you. Thank you for subscribing, for leaving a 5-star review. Give yourself permission to thrive this week, and we will see you next time. Much love, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. If there was something in this conversation that spoke to you, we'd so appreciate it if you would take the time to subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and share this episode with women and mothers you know, because you are here to thrive. See you next time.